do that, God's going to be working in us. He's going to be helping us along the way. We can use other people's lives, other people's achievements, as encouragement, as something that spurs us onward. But it shouldn't be something that we compare ourselves to, because God is not comparing us to them. But we should take encouragement from other people's achievements, and that should help us press onward. We need to be willing to attempt great things for God. Now, please do not look at Bon and I as better Christians because we're moving to Uganda. I think if you know us, you can ask Remy, we're not better Christians. Tita baby, mom. We're not. But we're just simply obeying God. We're simply obeying God and what He's placed on our hearts and the path that He's placed before us. So we're striving for the gospel in what God has given us. We're simply obeying. And so don't be paralyzed, but strive. You can strive through volunteering at school or in your neighborhood. You can strive for the faith of the gospel at work. You can practice hospitality with your neighbors. You can serve overseas even. It doesn't matter how it's done. It's that your lives reflect Christ. Answer and obey where God is calling you. God is going to honor the little baby steps of faith. So the other term that I see being laid out here in verse 27 and 28 is the word unity. And I say unity, although it's not mentioned, I say unity because you see the phrases one spirit, one mind, standing or striving side by side. And that's what came to mind, was the word unity. So as we strive, we need to do it in unity. And that can be by sharing the burdens with your brethren, or it can be joining them in the tasks that God has given them. And it also means that we, as a church, cannot have bitterness. We can't have complaining. We can't have backbiting or gossip. And the only way that the gospel can succeed today is with a church that'll stand fast together, in one spirit, in one mind, raising each other up in prayer and encouraging one another to those good works and to gospel living. So that breaks down verses 27 and 28, the importance of fearlessness or courage, and then striving and unity. Now on to verses 29 and 30. 29. For it has been granted to you that for the sake of Christ you should not only believe in Him, but also suffer for His sake, engaged in the same conflict that you saw I had, and now hear that I still have. So verse 29 says, for it has been granted to you. Granted to you. Granted could also be translated as freely given. So let me read it like that. For it has been freely given to you that for the sake of Christ you should not only believe in Him, but also suffer for His sake. So this verse is saying that faith and suffering are given to you by God. Given means gifts. You might be like, gifts? Suffering, a gift from God? And the emphasis, interestingly enough, falls on the gift of suffering. Not only given to you to believe, but also to suffer. And this is spoken to ordinary church goers, ordinary believers. It's not just for Paul. So this applies to us. Part of our calling as Christians is to believe and to suffer in the service of Christ. As 2 Corinthians 1 says, if we are afflicted, it is for your comfort and salvation. And if we are comforted, it is for your comfort. So that's what I want us to see. I want to see that suffering is part of our calling. And it's a gift from God. It's not a curse, it's a gift. And that makes me go, whoa, you know. And I'm sure that many of you have noticed over the last few years, and even the last few decades in reality, but especially the last few years, the growing sense that things are becoming more and more difficult for Christians in America. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It means that the church is going to be purified, tested, and it means that God is ushering in His kingdom and His reign on earth. So it's not a bad thing, but we do need to be ready. We need to be ready for the trouble that will come. We need to be ready for the disapproval and danger when it comes. And 1 Peter 4:12 says, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal that is coming upon you, as though something strange were happening to you." So it shouldn't be strange that fiery ordeals are coming. What should be strange is that we've gone so long without any. We've lived without it. And if you're paying attention to the news lately, the hostility towards the church, towards Christians, is just growing. Unbelievably harsh within the Middle East. Christians in Iraq and Syria, they're losing their lives for the name of Christ. And I'm imagining that those brothers and sisters there are reading 1 Peter 4 and saying to themselves, fiery trials are here, fiery ordeals are here. Peter is speaking to us. This is for us. And so thankfully, we do not yet live in a country that systematically kills Christians. And we need to be in prayer for our brothers and sisters that do live in such places. But our country is becoming more hostile towards Christians. I think if you look at the media and how we're typically portrayed, we're portrayed as ignorant or goofy or extremists or weirdos. The list could go on. But beyond that, beyond how we're portrayed, our stance on issues like abortion and homosexuality, our stance in what we believe, it's risky. It's risky to have that. We don't have a credible voice when it comes to those topics. We're pushed aside. And we're even called, bigots or, a whole mess of terms. And if you were to get on a subway in New York and publicly announce, I'm a Christian and I believe that abortion and homosexuality is wrong, you might actually get physically abused, if not verbally, at the very least. And so why do I bring this up? Bring it up to get to my second point, that suffering is part of the Christian walk. Whether suffering because of what you believe, or suffering because of what you stand on, suffering is going to occur. And I don't mean a stubbed toe or a bad day, but I mean you'll be met with opposition when proclaiming the gospel. But it's through our suffering, it's through that opposition that we need to press on, and we need to do it for Christ's sake. And we can face that kind of suffering with courage and boldness. And boldness in the face of suffering is at the heart of what it means to be a Christian. So let me try and join all of this together. When we strive, we should do it unified, together for the gospel. And because of this unity in Christ, we can be fearless, we can be courageous, and we can be bold before our opponents, even in the face of suffering. This is what Paul is saying is at the heart of living worthy of the gospel of Christ. By our unified striving, we should expect to suffer, and to suffer for His sake.